this is our final project in Access, yay! And we will continue working on databases that involve diving. So for this project, we will actually work on reports. So the last couple of projects we created queries and forms. So this time we'll go over creating reports and making edits, changes to some reports. So if you haven't already, be sure to save your database and change your 1 to a 2 and click Enable Editing. So to get started, we want to use the Report Wizard to create a report based on the dive trips table. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Create tab. And in the Reports group, I'm going to click on Report Wizard. So when the Report Wizard window opens, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I have the right table selected, and it should be dive trips. So I'm going to scroll down the list to dive trips. And then we want to use specific fields from the dive trips table. So we only want to use ID. So I'm going to go ahead and use the single arrow to move the ID field over. And we want to use location, move it over. City, next is country, and last is start date. So you should have selected fields, ID, location, city, country, and start date. You can go ahead and click next. Now on the next page it says, do you want to add any grouping levels? Well, our instruction tells us that we do not want to add any grouping levels, so we can just go ahead and click next. Now we do want to do a sort based on the ID field. So to do that, we simply want to click on this more arrow and choose the ID field in the list. It's already set for ascending, and then all we have to do is click next. Now here it's how would you like the layout of your report to be? So layout, we have 3 different options: stepped, blocked, outline. So the instruction tells us to choose block. Notice that when we choose the different layout types that we actually get a little preview over here. So I'm going to click on blocked and see how it's a little bit different now. And the orientation, it wants us to select portrait. So if portrait is not already selected, you'll want to click the radio button for portrait and click next. Now we want to name this report Dive Trip Listing. So I'm going to put my insertion point between the dive and trips and put that space in there. I'm going to delete that S and I'm going to add listing. And we want to just make sure preview the report radio button is selected and then click finish. So you should have a view of the report similar to what I have on my screen. And we want to go ahead and make some changes to this report. So it wants us to switch to the layout view. So notice that we are in like a print preview here. So we need to close the print preview. And now we have the Report Design Tools tab. And on the Design tab, we can actually click View and we can change our view to Layout View. Alright, so once we have it in Layout View, it wants us to first off change the page orientation to landscape. So if you're not in the Page Setup tab in your Report Layout Tools, go ahead and click Page Setup tab and notice that we have it on Portrait. We want to change it to Landscape. It wants us to resize the start date label in the text box by dragging the right edge of the controls to the right to clearly display all information as shown in Figure 1. So to do that, we want to simply click on this little bit of text we can barely see, and then we can hold the Control key on our keyboard, click the number below it, and that selects the control and the text box. And then when we want to let our sizing handle change to the two-sided arrow, click and just drag it over a bit so that we're seeing all of that information listed there. Now one hint it did give us was to, if this field list navigation pane opened, to go ahead and close it. I kind of skipped over that step, so I'm just going to go ahead and close it now. And so once you kind of compare what you have on your screen with the Figure 1 information, then you can go ahead and click Save on the Quick Access toolbar. And one other thing I forgot to do, go ahead and click in the Start Date label and you actually want to put a space between start and date. And now your report should actually look like the report on the next page. So if you're satisfied that your report looks similar to that, go ahead and click Save on the Quick Access toolbar and go ahead and close this report. All right, so step 3. This time we're going to create some labels using the reports. So I'm going to click on my Create tab again. I'm going to navigate over here to my reports group, but notice my labels is kind of grayed out. So to create a label, we actually have to know which table we're going to pull that information from. So our instruction tells us that we want to use the Dive Masters table. So I'm going to click the Dive Masters table. I'm not going to open it, but I'm just going to click it to select it. Now notice that I can select the labels now. So I'm going to click labels and I'm going to get that label wizard window. So what we want to do here is we want to scroll down this list of product numbers until you get to the 5160. And notice there's a lot of options here. And we want to make sure our filter by manufacturer is selected Avery. So there's a whole list of manufacturers here. So in case you are confused at what these are templates that we can use to print our labels on. So you can buy these templates in office supply stores or wherever. And Avery is a fairly popular brand. We use it a lot here at the college. So I'll go ahead and click Next. And we want to change our formatting just a little bit. If your font size is on 8, we want to go ahead and change that to 10. Everything else probably should be the same. If you have font name as Arial, font weight light, color black, and we don't want to have the italic or underline checked. So if you have it set to those, go ahead and click Next. And now we actually want to add our information to the mailing label. So we have our list of available fields over here, and then this is the prototype label. So this is what our label will look like once we add our fields in the order that we want them. So the first field that we want to move over is the Dive Master ID field. So I have it selected and I'm just going to click the move over, and I want to put a space in there, and now I want to click last name. And when I have Dive Master ID and last name, I'm going to click enter so I can start the next line. And now I'm going to click address. And address is the only thing I want on that second line, so I'm going to hit enter again and start this third line. So I'm going to click on city, and I'm going to go ahead and put my punctuation in here. So I'm going to put a comma and a state, or a space. Now I'm going to click on state. And there, after I select state, I'm going to put another space in there and put in postal zip code. And I'm going to click next. Alright, so now on this next page, we can sort our labels by one or more fields in your database. So we only want to use one field, so we're going to use last name. And another reason people might want to sort by fields, if you're doing a bulk mailing, you may want to sort by city and state. A lot of times the post office requires that information be brought to the post office already sorted, so that's one reason you may want to sort your labels. Typically we always tend to default to alphabetical order by name, but there might be instances where you want it in a different order. So we can go ahead and click next once you have sort by last name selected here. And now we want to rename the Dive Master. We want to rename the report to Dive Master Labels. So remember, if you're selecting labels and deleting it, make sure you do not leave a space between the beginning of this title and Dive Masters. And be sure to remove the S. So it should be Dive Master Labels, and just make sure you don't have a space here, or you will get an error. If you end up with an error, you need to go back and remove that space. Alright, so once you have your title put in there, go ahead and click Finish, and you will get this some data may not displayed error. Just go ahead and click OK. Alright, so this is what our labels look like now. And we just want to go ahead and save and close this now. So I'm going to save it in our quick access toolbar, and I'm going to come over here and close this report. Alright, so step 4. Now we're actually going to make some changes to an existing report. So we want to go ahead and click on the Dive Master Assignment report, and we want to look at it in Design View. So from the Home tab, we can go over here to View and go all the way down to Design View. Right now it's in Report View. And the first thing it wants us to do is drag the right edge of the report as far left as possible to the 10-inch mark. So we just want to put our mouse over here, and when our sizing handle changes to the two-sided arrow, we just want to drag that right edge to the 10 mark. So with the Dive Master Assignment report still open in Design View, we want to change the text in the Dive Master Assignment label in the report header section to Trips by Dive Master. So I'm going to click here, I'm going to select my text, and I'm going to just type in Trips by Dive Master. And now I'm going to click on Format, and we want to make this bold. So, alright, so the step 6. With the Dive Master Assignment report still open in Design View, it wants us to select the participant's text box and then right align the contents within the text box. So here it's talking about the details section. So I have the report header, page header, Dive Master header. So here's the details section. Notice there's two different participant boxes. So make sure you're in the details section, and then just click the participant's text box. And again, from the Format tab, we just go up here to the font group and click Right Align. Okay, so with the Dive Master reports still open in Design View, it wants us to select all the label controls in the page header section at the same time and italicize them. So here's the page header section, and so we're going to select each one of these label controls. So I selected the first one, and now I'm going to just hold my control key and select each one of them. And it just wants us to simply click, then from the Format tab we can just click Italics. So now those are all italicized. So next we want to click the Dive Master header section bar. So here's the Dive Master section header, and we want to change the alternate color, the alternate row color to no color in the property sheet. So again, if you're on the Format tab, you have the option to change your alternate row color here. So if you click the More option, you can just scroll down here to no color. There's another way you can do it using the property sheet. It just makes more sense to change it here. Alright, with the Dive Master Assignment report still open in Design View, we want to open the Group, Sort, and Total pane, and then open the Dive Master ID footer section. So we are going to click on the Design tab, and in the Grouping and Totals group, we're going to click on Group and Sort. Now notice it kind of puts a footer section down here below our report. And this is where we want to add our, or we want to open our Dive Master ID footer section. So notice we're in Dive Master right here. So we want to kind of just move over to the right to the More option and click it. And then it kind of gives you some more areas that you can change. So when you get to the Without a Footer section, you want to click on the More option. And we simply want to choose With Footer section here. And the next thing we want to do, so this is in our group, so now we want to go to Sort. We want to change the start date sort field to country. So right now we have sort by start date. We want to change this to country. And it wants us to add a second sort order to the report by city. So here we can add a group or sort. So we want to click on Add Sort, and then we want to choose City. So now we have a group, sort, and total list, or this is our group, sort, and total list. So we're grouping it by master ID, we're sorting it by country, and then by city. So once you have those added, then you can actually just come over here and close this little grouping dialog box. All right, so now we want to add a text box control to the Dive Master footer section containing the expression equals sum, parenthesis, bracket, participants, bracket, parenthesis. So to add a text box in the Report Design Tools, in the Design tab, in the Controls group, you want to click on Text Box. And when I bring my mouse down here, then I have the option to put it wherever. So remember, we just added the Dive Master ID footer to this report. So now we can just click over here and add our text box control. So in the unbound, we want to click in there in the box that has unbound, and we want to type in equals sum. Then we want to do a parenthesis, a bracket, and participants. A parenthesis, a bracket, then a parenthesis. And this will subtotal the number of participants for each Dive Master. So with the Dive Master assignments report still open, we want to drag the bottom edge of the report footer section down to about 5 inches. So now we're just jumping down here, and we are just moving this bottom edge down to about a half an inch. So we want to copy the new text box control that we just added to the Dive Master footer section and paste it in the report footer section. So I still have this selected, so I'm going to bring my mouse back up here and I'm going to right click over it, and I'm just going to copy it. I'm just going to come down here and click, right click, and paste. Now notice it kind of pasted it over to the left margin. So hint, both the text box and its accompanying label will be copied and pasted. So you should see the text box and the label over here. And then the label for the one in the footer is up here, or the Dive Master ID footer. So we want to modify the new label in the Dive Master ID footer section to read subtotal and colon. So I'm going to click here. I want to remove the text 19, and I'm going to type in subtotal with a colon. And we want to modify the other label in the report footer section to read grand total with a colon. So just over here to this label, I'm going to type in grand total and put my colon in there. Now with the Dive Master Assignments report still open in Design View, it wants us to align the right edge of the new Sum Participants text boxes in both the Dive Master ID footer and report footer sections with the right edge of the participants text box in the details section. So we just want to grab both of these. So I'm going to do them one at a time, and we just want to move them basically over to the right edge. And let go. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And let it go. Alright, and it wants us to align the right edge of the new subtotal label and the grand total label in the report section with the rating text box in the details section. So we want to align these with rating, and so I'm just going to actually resize them. Because if we try to drag them to move them, it will also move the participation text box. So I'm just going to try to visually kind of resize them, because we want those to kind of be in a straight line down as well as participants. Okay. So the next thing it wants us to do is add a new text box to the report footer section at about the 2-inch mark on the horizontal ruler with the following options. So first I'm going to go up to my report design tools in my design tab and click on text box again. And we want to bring this to the footer, and it says at about the 2-inch mark. So here's our 2-inch mark. So I'm just going to click right on the 2-inch mark. And it wants us to enter the expression count, and then parenthesis, bracket location, bracket parenthesis. So equals count location. All right, so once you've typed that in, it says this expression will count the total number of records in this report. So we want to modify the accompany label to read number of trips. So here where it says text box 23, we want to type in number of trips. And be sure to add your colon. Alright, so it wants us to switch to print preview. So and one thing, I have mine down a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can lift this up just so it's a little more in line with the ones down here. I'm going to go up just one. Okay, now to switch to print preview in the design tab, I'm going over to review, report, and now we can scroll down to the bottom, and we should have number of trips and our text box here kind of lined up with these two columns. Same thing with subtotal and grand total. We want to kind of have these lined up a little bit so they look, you know, one part of creating reports is just having a eye appeal, adding the eye appeal to them. So once you check your report and it kind of looks similar to what the figure 3 shows on the instructions, go ahead and click Save. You can close this Dive Masters assignment report and you're ready to submit. If you have any questions or need help, feel free to give me a call or send me an email.